The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. We're in the dead of Thursday afternoon, and it's a great pleasure to rise to my feet to oppose this Trump education legislation bill. Mr Speaker, may I join with my colleagues firstly in wishing Chris Hipkins, his partner Jade, the very, very heartiest congratulations to the birth of their lovely boy Charlie. It's terrific to see the next generation of Labour leadership being in training already. And can I also acknowledge Heke Parata, because for all of the albatrosses that she's had around her ministerial neck, she's always kept a smile on a dial, always kept a sense of poise with that portfolio, and she's done good service for the government. And we appreciate that it's a tough job and that she is doing her very best. So we wish her well when Mr Key makes a decision about how long she will warm that seat for. Today is the 20th of October. Today is the date of the third US presidential debate. It was the historic moment where a candidate declared that they would not necessarily accept the result of the US election, something which has been incredibly harshly panned across the globe and across the US political spectrum. The reason that I mention that, Mr Speaker, is that the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, has made, according to The Economist magazine, a feature of something called post-truth politics. He doesn't give a damn whether there is any facts or evidence in his argument as long as he gets a soundbite and becomes more and more outrageous to shore up his base. The reason I mention it is because exactly the same approach has been employed by the Trump national government in respect of charter schools, sir. Charter schools are a post-reality form of education. In the real world, the reality-based school, we use things like the Education Review Office to see how we're going. We use the Official Information Act to allow the public to get information about how schools and the Education Ministry are performing. We have teacher training standards so that the teachers we put in front of our children are qualified to teach them. In the Trump national government's charter schools fantasy land, Planet Key, none of the above applies. None of it applies. You don't need to be a qualified teacher to get a job stumping up in a charter school. You are immune from the Official Information Act in a post-reality charter school, and no one's going to give a damn what your results are because you're not even subject to the Education Review Office. The reason, sir, that I feel just a tad passionate about this is I don't want to see creeping Trumpism in New Zealand. And charter schools are the thin end of the wedge. Why would we give to private investors government taxpayer-funded capital so they can purchase assets, and when they go belly up, they don't have to return them to the taxpayer? Why would we pay 3 to 5 times as much to educate a student? That's the taxpayer subsidising 3 to 5 times as much per student in a Trumpist charter school what a regular school gets in the same community. It's such nonsense, except it's not an accident, because certain private interests have lobbied the ever kind and generous National Party for a business break so they could make profit out of educating children. In this post-reality Trump school of education, charter schools are the way to go, and it doesn't matter what the evidence says. It does not matter if the results are indiscernible from state schools teaching on 1/3 the budget in the same community. The government is so ideologically wedded to this that they'll do it anyway. And to make matters worse, they will mouth off about evidence-based policy. This is the opposite. This is post-reality politics, ideological claptrap, self-interested rorting and destruction of the public education system. just like they are so out of touch that they want to ruin state housing and turn it over to so-called social housing providers so they can make a buck even if they're run offshore. And the average Kiwi has had an absolute gutsful. That is why the polls do show, Minister Coleman, that John Key's popularity is lower today than at any point since he became Prime Minister. And 2 of the last 3 polls show National at its lowest level of support since it first took office. 2 of 3 polls show National barely above 40%. I'm looking forward to the first 39, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm looking forward to the smile on Simon Bridges' face when the first 39% poll comes in, because he'll be one step closer to his succession plan. But will Jonathan Coleman be smiling as well, sitting next to him? God, imagine the jostling that goes on in that front bench when the writing is just a little bit more discernibly on the wall. And imagine that sort of voice that you hear coming through the ether, the sort of heh heh heh, which is Judith Collins plotting her takeover and then euthanasia of the entire National front bench as she amasses all portfolios unto herself. It's the same level of logic, Mr. Speaker, as this bill, because it has the same relationship to the truth. It has a Trump elastic relationship with the truth. Mr. Speaker, if members opposite think that this is funny, it was just yesterday that we heard that Telford Institute was being fined $1.5 million because it rorted the tertiary education system. So the disease that started with National's Trump charter schools and infected the PTE sector has now gone all the way to the university sector, and Lincoln University, a once proud institution, is having to pay $1.5 million back for embezzling the government. Embezzling the government of $1.5 million by overstating the duration of courses delivered through its Telford division. And this bill, sir, gives those same institutions the ability to invest in charter schools. Why would we want universities investing in charter schools? Why would we ask universities to obey a certain set of transparency and prudential measures when they're doing their core business, but then exempt them from the same criteria when they're investing in Trump charter schools? Why would we do that? I challenge the minister, I challenge any member opposite to take to their feet and explain to the New Zealand public what possible logical explanation can there be for asking universities to dodge the normal requirements so that they can invest in these ideological claptrap charter schools. Speaking of post-reality politics, in the real world, parents have to drop their kids at school and then go and work an 8 or 9 hour or 10-hour day, and then, if they're lucky, find some way to get somebody to pick their kids up. In the post-truth Planet Key world, we've got a bill which says, hey, we can change school hours as much as we like. Parents will just have to fit in. In the real world, being a principal of a school, as my colleague has said, is a full-time job. In this Trump post-reality bill, what the heck? It's a part-time job. A principal could run 3 schools at once. Except, I hope, not in my electorate of New Lynn, not in Kelston, not in Green Bay, not in Linfield, not in Avondale. No. We think it's a full-time job, and we're quite happy with our principals, who are very important leaders in our community, sticking to their day job. Mr. Speaker, summing up, this bill is the thin edge of a deep divide in New Zealand politics between those who think that the public education system is worth protecting, that it should be accountable, that it should be transparent, and those who are prepared to mortgage our children's future and take a punt to do favours for private investors. And I say shame on them, because it took decades to build up a world-class public education system. And we do not need post-truth, Trump-light ideologues on the government benches wrecking it to set up some get-rich-quick scheme for their mates.